Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I handled some problems I encountered while installing these cabinets. And we're also going to take the project to completion so you can see what it looked like when it was finished. But really quickly, I want to thank DAP for sponsoring this video. We're going to be using this anti-shrink caulking to fix an unforeseen problem towards the end of the video. So if you want to help support the channel, choose DAP products whenever possible. So I showed up to this job after all the cabinet boxes had been installed, and it was my job to do all the finishing, all the gables, all the trims. I really liked these cabinets, just a really nice finish. Now, one of the recurring themes on this job was that everything almost worked. So we get all the way to the very end, everything's lining up until this one. You know, I never did figure out exactly what the problem was. I think the box might have been bigger, so I had to pull this off and cut it down to at least create the illusion of everything being the same. It took 8 weeks for the cabinets to show up, so the last thing we were going to do was send that box back and have them remake it. During a renovation, it's very rare that you will get ideal circumstances. So your goal is to create the illusion of perfection under less than ideal circumstances. But in this case, if we want to blame someone, this lays squarely on the cabinet builder's shoulders. The only way you would ever know those two face frames are a different thickness is if you're laying on the floor looking at it. However, from your regular vantage point, it's almost imperceptible. When installing cabinet kicks, I like to use glue. I think of each one of these globs as like a fastener. And when nailing, I use as few nails as possible, and I try to place them in a position that you would never be able to see it again unless you were laying on the floor. For the uninitiated, this is what is called a gable, and it's what hides the unfinished edges of the cabinets and just ties everything together. In this case, I don't use any glue because I always think about the person who might have to take it apart someday. And again, I am placing the screws where they will either be naturally obscured or be obscured by the things that are eventually put on the shelves. They will get covers that I'll be showing at the end of the video, but it's still best to try and obscure things whenever possible. The first thing I'll be installing is these large gables, and there is nothing better than a track saw when it comes to cutting these gables, or at least the first cut, because they often have to be scribed. But in this case, there wasn't very many that needed to be scribed. So this side was fairly easy because the whole back side will be obscured by the fridge. And what I'm looking for here is a 7/8 measurement from top to bottom so that the cabinet doors line up with the face of the gable. So I'm obviously a little rusty on installing cabinets because the ideal spot to drill that is directly in front of the center of the hinge because the hinge will hide the fastener. But I don't remember that until about a quarter of the way through the kitchen. And for anyone wondering, what we're doing here is a light countersink. It's always good to clamp the gable or provide pressure so that it winds up snug, and you use an 1.25" screw so that it won't go through the face of the gable. But if you have a heavy trigger finger, you're going to go through. Now, one of the interesting things about this kitchen design is that these useless corner cabinets where you can't access anything properly are kind of the bane of a kitchen designer's existence. However, we will be able to access that through the other side of the wall. So an interesting concept there. One of the annoying things about working with dark cabinets is it's really hard to see your pencil lines because they just kind of blend in with the natural dark grain. So in this case, I'm just using a knife to mark it. It also happens to be more accurate than marking it with a pencil. That's exactly what I'm doing. This was the only gable that actually needed to be scribed, but because it was only the top and bottom of the wall that flared out, I was still able to use the track saw. Definitely the most annoying thing about gables is just carrying them through the job site. I'm pretty sure I only had to cut this one once, and there was about a 16th inch gap right here, but because the material is dark, you can't see the shadow line. That's one of the benefits of working with darker materials. Oh, and hey, looks like I finally remembered where to put the screws. It's very risky to do a plunge cut on the back of your cabinets, and I very clearly went a little too far there, but thankfully in the end the electrical plate did actually cover it. I've got a little dirty laundry to air. The cabinets came to us with the shelf clips installed upside down, which caused the box installers to install the cabinets upside down, which forced me to have to flip the cabinets, re-drill the hinges, and ruin my perfect screw placement. But I got the problem solved, and that's what we created fast cap covers for anyways. For most of my career, the most common cabinet door choice has been the painted white MDF shaker door. Very bland and boring if you ask me, so it's been a pleasure to install these, which was a solid oak shaker. A very nice looking door, in my opinion. Since we're already confessing, you may as well know that the cabinet on the right was too tall, so I had to cut the kick about an inch shorter, and I also had to remove the drywall from in behind to sink the cabinet back far enough to make the doors and gables work. And that is how I made it look like the wall is not 3/4 of an inch out of plumb. Time for baseboards, but sorry, I really didn't film much of it. Here's a little. It never hurts to do a dry fit before your install. Next, it's time for the floating shelves, and we just used 5/8 ready rod. You take a couple of bolts and you tighten them against each other, and that allows you to be able to twist it in with a socket wrench. You want to get at least a few inches into the wall. My first video I ever did was actually about installing floating shelves, and I used a spade bit to drill the holes in the back of the shelves in that video. That was risky. In this one, the cabinet manufacturers just left about a 3/4 inch slot that I filled up with construction adhesive. Then you slide it right on, and it was more than adequate. I also gave them the slightest slope upwards because once the shelves get fully loaded, they're going to sag a little bit anyways. It's not quite as sloped as it looks like in the video though. That's just my camera not being set level. Once you start adding straight materials into a house, you see where all the curves are. So this header had obviously flexed a lot over the years. At first we thought we were going to have to flat tape it, but then I decided to try this DAP anti-shrink caulking. And you know what? It worked out really well. I left it overnight to dry, and it was paint ready the next morning and almost as flat as I had left it. Any other caulking would have taken multiple applications due to the shrinkage, so I would say this product actually lived up to its claim. It definitely saved me some time and helped me focus on the other things that needed to be finished in this project. For this gray cabinet, I just painted some wooden fast caps with the touch-up paint, and from far away, looks good enough to have some books in front of it. And this is my final walkthrough of the space once I finished. Still have to do the crown, so we're not actually done. And the microwave trim kit. And we got this to make use of the dead space. Pretty good choice. Just did my usual European hinge thingy. Nothing major. And we got this. This is their light. Kind of cool. And that's it. All done. And here's the crown after I finished it. Sorry I didn't film it, you guys. It was really heavy. This piece was 9 feet. It was solid oak, 3/4 of an inch thick. Hard to cut. Hard to hold up there by yourself and install. But I got it done. And I think it looks pretty good, so I'm happy. Customers are happy. Job well done.